The voice that crossed oceans. The studio lights blazed hot and bright as another Tuesday evening unfolded at the Majestic Theater in Los Angeles. Outside, palm trees swayed gently in the California breeze, but inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Hundreds of people filled the velvet seats, their excited whispers creating a soft hum that echoed through the grand auditorium. Behind a long mahogany table sat 4 judges, their faces familiar to millions. There was Maria, with her warm smile and encouraging words. There was David, always ready with a clever joke. There was Jennifer, who listened with her heart as much as her ears. And then there was Simon Cowell, the man everyone watched most carefully, the judge whose opinion could make or break a dream. Simon leaned back in his leather chair, his expression unreadable as always. He had seen thousands of performers over the years, maybe tens of thousands. Some were brilliant, some were terrible, most fell somewhere in between. After so many seasons of judging talent shows, very little surprised him anymore. He had developed what people called his poker face, that cool, measured look that revealed nothing until he spoke. The afternoon had been long, filled with one audition after another. Some acts made the judges smile. Others made them cringe. Simon had pressed his red button dozens of times, sending hopeful performers home with their dreams deferred. It was part of the job, the difficult part that never got easier, but someone had to maintain standards. Now, as the crew prepared for the next audition, Simon took a sip of water and glanced at his notes. The producer had mentioned something about this next performer, but Simon couldn't quite remember what. Something unusual, perhaps. But then again, producers always said that. The stage lights dimmed slightly, and a figure walked out from the wings. He was a young man, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that held both nervousness and determination. He wore simple clothes, nothing flashy, just dark jeans and a plain button-down shirt. There was something humble about him, something genuine that made the audience lean forward with interest. "Hello," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying a slight accent that suggested English was not his first language. "My name is Miguel Santos. I am 26 years old, and I have come here from the Philippines." Maria smiled encouragingly. "Welcome, Miguel. Tell us about yourself. What brings you all the way to America?" Miguel took a breath, his hands trembling slightly as they gripped the microphone stand. "I grew up in a small village," he began, his words careful and measured. "My mother raised me alone. Life was not easy. We did not have much money. But she worked hard, very hard, to give me everything I needed." Jennifer nodded sympathetically. "And what about your father?" A shadow passed across Miguel's face, brief but noticeable. "I never knew my father," he said quietly. "My mother never told me who he was. She said it was complicated, that she would tell me when I was ready. But she died 2 years ago, before she could explain." The audience grew quiet, the playful energy replaced by something deeper, more solemn. "I am sorry," David said softly, and the other judges murmured agreement. Miguel nodded his thanks. "After she passed, I found some old letters in her room. They were from my father, written many years ago. That is how I learned who he is." He paused, gathering courage. "My father is Freddie Aguilar." The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Maria gasped. David's eyebrows shot up. Jennifer put her hand over her mouth. And Simon, for the first time in years, actually sat up straighter in his chair. Even those in the audience who didn't know the name could feel the weight of it. But many did know. Freddie Aguilar was a legend in the Philippines, a folk singer whose music had touched millions of hearts. His most famous song, Anak, had become one of the most recorded songs in history, translated into dozens of languages, telling the story of a parent's love and a child's journey. "Does he know about you?" Jennifer asked gently. Miguel shook his head. "No. I tried to contact him, but I could not reach him. I do not even know if he remembers my mother. It was so long ago. But I thought, maybe if I come here, maybe if I sing, somehow the message will reach him. Maybe he will know that his son exists, and that his son carries his music in his heart." Simon Cowell, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was quieter than usual, lacking its typical sharp edge. "That's quite a story, Miguel. But this is a talent competition. Are you here to find your father, or are you here to show us what you can do?" Miguel met Simon's eyes directly. "Both," he said simply. My mother loved my father's music. She played it every day. Through his songs, even though I never met him, I felt connected to him. Music is what we share. So yes, I want to show you what I can do. And I hope that somehow, somewhere, he will hear it too. Simon nodded slowly. All right then, what will you be singing for us today? I will sing, Anak, Miguel replied. My father's song. The song my mother sang to me when I was a child. The audience held its breath as the opening notes began to play. The melody was simple, haunting, built on acoustic guitar chords that seemed to speak of home and memory and love that crosses any distance. Miguel closed his eyes and began to sing. His voice was not technically perfect. It did not have the polished quality of a trained professional. But it had something more valuable, something that no amount of training could teach. It had soul. It had truth. Every word carried the weight of his story, the years of wondering about his father, the loneliness of growing up without that connection, the bittersweet love he felt for a man he had never met. As he sang, something extraordinary happened. Tears began to roll down Miguel's cheeks, but he did not stop singing. His voice remained steady, growing stronger with each verse. He sang about a child who strays from home, about a parent who waits and worries, about the understanding that comes too late, about the forgiveness that heals all wounds. The judges sat completely still. Maria wiped her eyes. David stared at the stage, transfixed. Jennifer had tears streaming down her face. And Simon Cowell, the judge who had seen everything, who prided himself on never being surprised, sat frozen in his chair. His expression had changed completely. Gone was the cool, measured look. In its place was something raw and real, a mixture of awe and emotion that millions of viewers would later replay over and over, unable to believe what they were seeing. When the final note faded into silence, the theater remained quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, the audience rose to their feet. The applause started softly and built into a thunderous wave of sound. People were crying, strangers embracing, everyone united in the power of what they had just witnessed. Simon stood up too, something he rarely did. He walked around the judges' table and approached the stage. Miguel watched him come, uncertain, hopeful, afraid. Miguel, Simon said, and his voice was thick with emotion. In all my years of doing this, I have never, and I mean never, been moved the way I just was by your performance. That was not just singing. That was something else entirely. That was a son calling out to his father across the ocean, across the years. That was love made into music. He paused, then continued. I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to make sure your father sees this. I'm going to use every resource I have to make certain that Freddie Aguilar knows you exist, knows you're here, and knows what you just did on this stage. Miguel's legs seemed to give way slightly, and he had to grip the microphone stand for support. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. 3 weeks later, Miguel stood in the same spot on the same stage. But this time, he was not alone. Next to him stood an older man with silver hair and kind eyes that looked exactly like Miguel's. Freddie Aguilar had flown from the Philippines the moment he heard. There had been tears, embraces, explanations, and forgiveness for time lost. Now, father and son stood together, each holding a guitar. The audience watched in silence as they began to play, Anak, together, their voices blending in perfect harmony. The distance between them finally closed. Simon Cowell watched from his seat, and for once, he was smiling.